What is up guys, it's Cal, and in this video we'll be taking a look at Restoration Druids on the Battle for Azeroth beta. We'll be looking at their baseline abilities as well as passives, then we'll be taking a look at their talents along with their PvP talents. As far as changes go, there are some here and there, but probably more than Guardian and Feral, but anyways, let's get started. So here are all the baseline abilities for Restoration Druids. First off, we have Rebirth. Now the changes to Rebirth is that it does have a cast time now, it's no longer instant cast. Its cast time's around 2-ish seconds, but that is based off of your haste, of course. Still 10-minute cooldown, it's obviously your battle res, but you can also res people to 100% health now, whereas on live you res them to 60% health, so they get res with full health now. But it's still 20% mana. So then there's Revive. Revive is unchanged, it's still your just normal res. Revitalize, that's your AoE res, reses everyone in the group, not changed at all. Nature's Cure is also not changed, 8-second cooldown. You dispel a friendly target, removing magic effects, curse effects, and poison effects from them. Sunfire, the only change to Sunfire is its radius, so it's still a quick beam of solar light that burns the enemy for some nature damage. It's a dot over 12 seconds to the primary target, and all enemies within 8 yards. On live, that's 5 yards. So it's 8 yards in BFA. Solar Wrath is unchanged, it just causes nature damage. Moonfire is also unchanged, causes arcane damage, arcane dot over 16 seconds, and you can use it in bear form in case you feel like going into bear form. Bark Skin is not changed at all, still 1-minute cooldown, reduces the damage you take by 20%, and prevents damage from delaying your spellcast. Lasts 12 seconds, and you can of course use it while stunned, frozen, incapacitated, feared, or sleeped, and usable in all shapeshift forms. So yeah, unchanged. Ironbark, the only change to Ironbark is that its cooldown is actually being reduced. It's being reduced to 1 minute, on live it has a cooldown of 1/2 minutes, so it's being reduced by 30 seconds. It still does the same thing, the target skin becomes as tough as Ironbark, reducing all damage taken by 20% for 12 seconds. Ursul's Vortex, unchanged, 1-minute cooldown, you put down a vortex on the ground, slows enemies through it, and the first time an enemy tries to get away from it, it sucks them back in. 8-yard radius, all that sort of stuff. Dash did have a bit of a change to it. So first off, its cooldown is actually being reduced from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, which is nice, but its movement speed increase is going from 70% on live down to 60%. So the movement speed is being nerfed. Also, the amount of time that you're dashed is being nerfed. It's going down from 15 seconds to 10 seconds in BFA. So going down by 5 seconds. Prowl is unchanged. It activates cat form, 6-second cooldown, that is your stealth, obviously. Regrowth just had one of its effects removed, so it still heals a target. It's a hot, over 12 seconds, but it will no longer have a 40% initial chance to crit heal. So Regrowth does not have that anymore. Rejuvenation, just it's been your hot. It's a hot, 15-second hot, not changed at all. Efflorescence is unchanged, still grows a healing blossom at the target's location, restoring some health to 3 injured allies within 10 yards every 2-ish seconds for 30 seconds, and you can put 1 down at a time. Life Bloom is unchanged, put it on target, heals them over some amount. It's a hot. When Life Bloom expires or is dispelled, the target is still healed for a higher amount, and you can only place 1 at a time. So unchanged. So for Swiftmend, the only change to Swiftmend is that its base cooldown is being reduced by 5 seconds. So in live it has a base cooldown of 30 seconds, and in BFA it will have a cooldown of 25 seconds. It still does the same thing, and instantly heals a friendly target for some amount. Wild Growth is not changed at all. 10-second cooldown, heals up to 6 injured allies within 30 yards of the target for some amount of health over 7 seconds. Healing starts high and declines over the duration. And then there's Tranquility. Now it still has a 3-minute cooldown. The original effect of it is still the same. Heals all allies within 40 yards for some amount of health over some amount of time. And then this part is new. So each heal heals the target for another some amount over 8 seconds stacking. So Tranquility, its heals stack. So if you see, I'm going to use it now. Look at my buffs, and it has a stacking buff. So as you see, that number just keeps going up, and it's refreshing. And then it counts down because I'm done with Tranquility. Now remember, we won't have our artifact weapons anymore, so you cannot move while using Tranquility. Then there's Innervate. The only change to Innervate is that it lasts on the target for 12 seconds up from 10 seconds. So still a 3-minute cooldown, you put it on a healer, and they can cast spells for now 12 seconds without costing any mana. Entangling Roots is unchanged. You can root a target for 30 seconds and then damage can cancel the effect. Hibernate is returning for all Druid specs. So this is something that was removed in Warlords of Draenor, it allows you to CC any beast or dragonkin for 40 seconds. You can put them to sleep, and then obviously if you attack them, damage them, they wake up. The CC is over. So Hibernate's returning, and then Soothe is also returning for all specs except Guardian, I think, is the only one that doesn't have Soothe. But this was removed in Legion, 10-second cooldown, and it dispels all enrage effects from the target. So that's awesome. That Soothe is coming back. And then there's Teleport Moonglade here. I'm pretty sure that Teleport Dreamwalk is staying because, well, I transferred my Druid over to the beta at one point and he had Teleport Dreamwalk on him. Now, this character does not have Teleport Dreamwalk because this isn't my Druid I transferred. This is a brand new Druid that I just made. So he doesn't have any of the Legion quests done, so he hasn't unlocked Teleport Dreamwalk, but I'm pretty sure Teleport Dreamwalk is staying. So, if you look at these abilities, you might notice one ability that's gone. Yeah, Healing Touch. Healing Touch is gone. You know, Healing Touch has been in the game since the beginning for Druids, and they just decided to remove it. So yeah. Now let's take a look at the passive abilities. So they're not changed at all. Pretty much the only thing that is changed is you don't have Living Seed. The Living Seed passive is not here anymore, but these other three passives are still here, and they're not changed at all. So your mastery, your healing is increased by some percentage for each of your restoration, heal over time effects on the target. Omen of Clarity, your healing over time from Life Bloom has a 4% chance to cause a clear casting state, making your next regrowth cost no mana. And then Ysera's Gift heals you for 3% of your max health every 5 seconds. If you're at full health, it'll heal another party or raid member that is injured. So those are all the passive abilities and normal baseline abilities. Now let's talk about the talents, and I'm also going to go over PvP talents in case you care about those. Now as far as the talents go, I believe maybe like half of them have been changed, which is at least more than what Guardian and Feral has. They pretty much have like no changes, but Restoration does have some changes to it. So for the first tier, Abundance. So Abundance now doesn't affect Healing Touch because Healing Touch is not a thing anymore. It only affects Regrowth. So for each Rejuvenation you have active, Regrowth's cost is reduced by 6. On live, that's actually 10%. And critical effect chance is increased by 6%. So the percentage is going down. Prosperity is not changed. Swiftman now has 2 charges and its cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. And then Cenarian Ward is also not changed. 30-second cooldown protects a friendly target for 30 seconds. Any damage taken will consume the ward and heal the target for some amount of health over 8 seconds. Now for the second tier. So they took out Displacer Beast for all Druids and they replaced it with this move called Tiger Dash, which is a 45-second cooldown. It replaces Dash, it activates Cat Form and increases movement speed by 200%, reducing gradually over 5 seconds. I've actually used this ability quite a bit on the beta, and I quite like it, but I also like Displacer Beast, so I don't really know which is better, because I also don't main my Druid, but that's for you to decide. Renewal is unchanged, 1.5 minute cooldown, heals you for 30% of your health, and it's usable in all shapeshift forms. And then Wild Charge is also unchanged, 15-second cooldown, and there is the breakdown of it in case you want to read it, but as I just said, it's not changed at all. You don't gotta worry. Now for the level 45 tier, Balance Affinity is not changed at all. You still get Astral Influence, increases the range of all your abilities by 5 yards. You still learn Moon Conform, you still learn Star Surge, you still learn Lunar Strike. Then for Feral Affinity, so you still get Feline Swiftness, the increase your movement speed by 15%, and you learn Rake, Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Swipe. So you no longer learn, what is it, Shred? I believe. Yeah, you no longer learn Shred because Shred is actually baseline. So if we go Cat Form here we have Shred. 40 energy awards a whole 0 combo points because if you don't have Feral Affinity, there's nothing to spend combo points on. But yeah, Shred is baseline. And then for Guardian Affinity, you still get Thick Hide, which does the same thing, reduces all damage you take by 6%, but you'll learn Thrash, Iron Fur, and Frenzy Regeneration. You no longer learn Mangle because let's go into Bear Form. Mangle is baseline. So you get Mangle baseline now. Then for the level 60 tier, which is not changed at all, you have Mighty Bash, 50-second cooldown. It's a 5-second stun, usable in all shapeshift forms. Mass Entanglement, 30-second cooldown. You root all players within 15 yards of you, or all enemies within 15 yards of you, for 30 seconds. And damage can cancel the effect, usable in all shapeshift forms. And then Typhoon is also unchanged, 30-second cooldown. Blast targets within 15 yards in front of you, and then it also dazes them for 6 seconds. Now, just like this level 60 tier, the level 75 tier is also completely unchanged. So Soul of the Forest still does the same thing. When you cast Swift Mend, you gain Soul of the Forest, increasing the healing of your next regrowth or rejuvenation by 200%, or increasing the healing of your next wild growth by 75%. Not changed. Cultivation, once again, not changed. When Rejuvenation heals a target below 60% health, it applies Cultivation to the target, healing them for some amount over 6 seconds. And then you got Incarnation, Tree of Life, which is also unchanged. 3-minute cooldown, you shapeshift into the Tree of Life, increasing healing done by 15%, and it increases your armor by 120%, and then does all the other stuff like grants protection from polymorph effects, and rejuvenation, wild growth, regrowth, and tingling roots are enhanced and last 30 seconds. And then for the level 90 tier, it only has one change on it. It's not Ender Piece though. Ender Piece still reduces the cooldown Tranquility by 60%, but then there's Stone Bark, which was moved up a tier, and it will reduce the cooldown of Iron Bark by 15 seconds now, whereas on live that's 30 seconds. So it's going down to 15 seconds, probably due to the fact that Iron Bark now has a 1-minute cooldown, down from 1.5 minutes as we mentioned earlier. And it still increases healing from your heal over time effects by 20%. And then Spring Blossoms is unchanged. Each target healed by Efflorescence is healed for an additional some amount over 6 seconds. And then we have the final tier. So Photosynthesis is new. We actually have something new here. While your Life Bloom is on yourself, your periodic heals heal 15% faster. While your Life Bloom is on an ally, your periodic heals on them have a 5% chance to cause it to bloom. So that's an interesting effect there. Germination is not changed at all. You can apply Rejuvenation twice to the same target. And then Flourish has some new stuff to it. So its cooldown is going up from 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. So 30-second increase there. But it will extend the duration of all your heal over time effects on friendly targets within 60 yards by 8 seconds. On live it's 6 seconds. So it's going up. And increases the rate of your heal over time effects by 100% for 8 seconds. So that second part I just read is new to Flourish. So those are all the talents. Now let's look at the PvP talents. So if you're unaware of how PvP talents will work in BFA, this is how it goes. You have these 4 bubbles here. The first bubble is the same for all classes and all specs. It is Gladiator's Medallion, Adaptation, and Relentless. They all do the same thing. They're on the first tier of Honor talents on live, and you get to pick between one of these 3. These next 3 bubbles are a giant pool of your already existing PvP talents. They just pruned a few of them off, but all these names should look familiar to you because they're all the same. Now as far as the changes go for them, most of them have actually been unchanged, which seems to be a trend between all of these classes reading out their honor talents. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the name and I'm going to mouse over it. If you want to know what it does, you can pause the video or look at your Resto Druid. But for the 2 that have changes to them, I'll of course stop and talk about what the changes are. So here we have Disentanglement, Nourish, which Nourish now affects regrowth, so your regrowth automatically applies 1 of your missing heal over time effects to the target. If all of them are present, regrowth critically heals. So they used to affect Healing Touch, but yeah, we know what happened to Healing Touch. Then there's Revitalize, Entangling Bark, Thorns, Deep Roots, which Deep Roots has changed, so it's still passive, increases the amount of damage required to cancel your Entangling Roots by 200%. So before, they used to make damage not cancel your Entangling Roots at all. Now its effect has, well, been changed somewhat. Then there's Focused Growth, Encroaching Vines, Overgrowth, Early Spring, Cyclone, and the Druid of the Claw. And those are all of the PvP talents as well as all of the normal talents. And there you have it, all of the changes to Restoration Druids coming in battle for Azeroth. And these changes will go live sometime in mid-July, probably July 17th, if I were to guess. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you like these changes, or not so much? You can let me know in the comments below, but if you guys enjoyed this video, you can leave a like on it. You can sub to the channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.